Tom Jones, uh, writer extraordinaire, a friend of the York Theatre Company for many years, and wonderful friend of mine. We're finally together on a Zoom call, and take it away.
Take it away, indeed. Yes. Well, it's the summer solstice.
It is.
And those dates, the winter solstice is my all-time favorite thing, paradox in nature. We did a whole musical based on the winter solstice called Celebration, which you know because you did it, but
yes.
And redid it. But also, Janet and I were married on the summer solstice of 1984. So
wow,
it's special. And what is it you would like to know?
Before we talk about our past, let's talk about the present. There's a very successful production of the Fantastics playing at, well, it was playing just recently at the Flint Repertory Theater in Michigan with an interesting twist. Can you tell us a little about this production and what your involvement was?
Sure. A year or a little over a year ago, I got an email from the director, the artistic director of the Flint Repertory Theater. And he had asked if it was possible that he could do a production of the Fantastics with two boys instead of a boy and a girl. And his intention, he said he wasn't going to change anything really, except the pronouns. But I said, well, let me take a look at it and see what I certainly don't object to the idea, but if it's done, I want it to be done thoroughly. So I looked at it, I began going through the script, and I began to figure out things that I think would be good. And then I got caught up in it, and I got very, very excited about it. And so with him sort of on the sidelines, encouraging and making suggestions, I did a rewrite of the Fantastics. Basically, the significant change and the reason for the change was that the Louisa, the girl of the story, is now Louis, a romantic, overly dramatic, romantic young guy who's gay. And then to do that, I thought it would be much more interesting to have the fathers become the mothers. And that works very well. It was fun to do. And one of them is name is a sort of Southern named Hattie Mae. And it's named after somebody in my hometown in Coleman, Texas, Hattie Mae Cobb. How about that name? Her daughter, who was in my class, was named Olga Mae Cobb. But unfortunate at the fonts, as they say. But Hattie Mae Cobb used to go to the Friday night football games, and she was very prominent, and she'd say, "Kill them, boys, kill them." You know, so I thought, well, we put Hattie Mae in there, and the other father, I decided should be like an ex-merchant marine, and so she has tattoos and the whole thing, and those. So those were the two basic changes, and then that required rewriting scenes and reconceiving, and particularly a number of lyrics needed to be changed. And in the process of changing them, I began to have fun and change the ones that didn't even need to be changed. Like in the abduction song, it's always in recent years been an abduction that's emphatic, an abduction that's polite, an abduction done with Indians, a truly charming sight. Well, we don't have Indians anymore.
Right.
So an abduction, I changed it to an abduction that's dramatic, an abduction that's polite, and abduction done on roller skates. It's really quite a sight. And abduction done on horseback, high-o silver and away. So you see so you see the masquerade, depends on what you pay, it depends on what you pay, that sort of thing, you know. And and it was just great fun to sort of like go through the thing with the mothers, and because the fathers particularly I pretty much took from the Rostand play, you know. And I thought it would be interesting to sort of like put them into more current vocabulary. And the only other change that I envisioned was, which didn't wind up happening in Flint because of other things, was that the mute should be perceived to be a boy with a top hat and so forth, the traditional mute. And then I thought it would be interesting at the intermission, if the mute comes out and is like setting some props and things, and the musicians come out and get ready for Act Two, and if the mute took off the top hat and just long flowing, and it's a girl, so it's like a little the change in Ingmar Bergman's The Magician, where the young assistant turns out to be not just the boy but his wife, you know. So and then I thought, well, it would be interesting then if the harpist begins to play. And we found Dan Shaheen found a harp piece that Harvey wrote for harp, but not for the Fantastics, for some classic dance music that he was working on. So we thought it'd be interesting to like do that. And then this mute, now changed from a young boy to a young girl, could begin to move and dance, and they would improvise together, at the end of which El Gallo would come out the side holding the cardboard moon, and the harpist would stop playing, and the mute would quickly push her hair and put on the top hat and become a boy again, and we start Act Two. So
now, did you see this production?
no, I'm very, very, very old, and I begin to be plagued with very old things, you know. But I just was in New York the week before this opened, for a week. It's the first time I'd been in New York and since the pandemic. And I was there for a reading of Harold and Maude with a wonderful young actor, Andrew Barth Feldman, wonderful person, but just at age 20, an extraordinary actor and singer.
I happened to see it, and I was delighted at the progress it has made and what he brought to it.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, of course,
Mary Beth
is wonderful, and the rest of the cast was wonderful under the direction of
Vicky
Clark.
Yes.
Yeah, it was wonderful seeing it and seeing how it has grown.
Well, anyway, that week in New York, I've given up my apartment in New York, and after 60 years there or something, but that week it near killed me, and you know, I was in a hotel a block and a half away, but just getting there and back and forth and trying to deal with restaurants and the whole thing. I just came back and thought, I don't know if we go into a full production, I don't know how I would do it. I guess I'd have to get one of my sons to give up part of their life and spend a few weeks making it possible for me to survive. Anyway, I'm getting off. So I didn't go to Flint, Michigan, but they're going to send me an archival video.
Oh,
And
good.
Dan Shaheen went for the opening
Uh-huh.
night and said it was really beautiful. And he felt that there needs to be more work done on the music, making the transition, the vocal transition from Louisa to Lewis, to capture. He felt that some things were lost because it hadn't been thoroughly done yet, you know. And so he's going to be working on that. And it's been just amazing, the response. I mean, it's just from all over the country, from reviews, including a new one just got yesterday morning from Peter Felicia, and
Yeah.
it's it means I'm humbled by it because it means so much to these people doing it and the people seeing it who like have been around this story and connected with it emotionally, but have been excluded from it in another way, you know.
Right.
And so it's God, it's wonderful. It's just, and the music theater is already getting inquiries about it, and
Good.
yeah, oh, I'm
Good.
hoping it'll get enough sales I can get the house painted, you know, and that's my goal for next year if I live long enough. But the other thing before leaving that, we're never going to get around to York, are we?
I know. No.
But I'll just, the one thing that I didn't change, but they wanted the producer Michael Ubieres, who directed it and who's terrific. And Dan said it was like beautiful. He has a member of the company who's been there a long time, who is a 300-pound African-American transvestite. And he asked if he could play the old actor, my part, you know. And I said, sure, why not? And so for this version, but this version only, Henry already has lines like, see makeup caked in glowing powder pink, imagine a beard and hair, imagine hair, and a box I've got all colors, so I beg you, imagine hair. And they've been doing that. They turned Mortimer into his gay partner, like an old gay couple bickering at each other the whole time. And so that sounds like fun, but it's the bad part about it is that I don't want to focus on just like doing a gay Fantastics.
Right.
What I want to focus on is showing that it's the same thing.
Right.
You know, it's two boys or a boy and girl. They're young, they're in love, they get hurt, they grow up, and the feelings that they have, it's the same thing. So,
Yeah.
and that's what people are responding to, and that's what people. And anyway, I'm very happy about that. Now, did you also want to talk something about the York before we
No,
close?
no, I think that's enough. That's
Yeah,
enough for this interview.
yes.
No, your history with the York goes back to 1981 when we did 110 in the Shade, and you and Harvey didn't have anything to do with the production. You came to see it, and as I recall, you had no history with us at that time. You were impressed with the simple staging by Fran Soder, and particularly with the cast, which included Bob Stockel, Jan Pisano, and Scott Ellis as Jimmy. Do you remember anything about seeing that performance at the Parish Hall at F?
The other thing I was particularly impressed by, and Harvey, was the brilliant work of the musical director, Eric Stern. Harvey was very impressed, and so was I. It was like beautiful with the limited facilities, and he was he was like the real thing, and went on to a very successful career as a Broadway conductor.
Yeah,
and
is now in Boston. We reconnected with him last year on one of our shows about shows we've done, but it was great to see.
In Boston, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He teaches at some, I'm embarrassed, I don't know the college, but anyway,
Yeah.
yes, he was wonderful. Fran brought him from
Cleveland. Yes, they both did
along with some,
Great Lakes Theater Festival together, you know, like on their way.
and Kane Park too.
Yes, oh, that's right,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, are there other things that you recall about that production?
It's not very clear in my head, no, I must say. I know we liked it a lot.
And as I recall, it prompted you to send us your new show, Colette Collage,
Right.
which was a version of Colette that had closed on the road. Would you talk about that? You sent it to Janet.
Well, it was
the next year, right?
It was conceived as a great big. I mean, we don't go around conceiving great big things. It's not our thing. But and so we had always thought of it. The Colette piece is based on various writings and so forth, and a production that my first wife Ellie had put together that Zoe Caldwell did of a play, and Harvey and I wrote like 4 songs, which the cast just sang at the beginning, and songs that we liked. But that was not getting any action, no more production. Nobody wanted to follow Zoe. I don't blame them. But anyway, we had so Harry Rigby, outrageous Harry Rigby, saw it as a big show for Debbie Reynolds, and we went out and played it for Debbie, and it was I think she would have been wonderful, you know. A lot of people might put her down, but being a MGM from those days,
right?
But she connected with it. When we played it, we had to stop at one point because she had to go to the bathroom and cry and wash her face and everything, and she was just terrific. But it didn't work out. She got a TV series that she thought was going to solve all of her financial problems, and of course it lasted 2 weeks or something. But it was enough of a commitment to and meanwhile we were trying everybody we could think of, and the other producer, what's his name, who ran the Kennedy Center. Anyway,
Roger Stevens.
Yes, with Roger Stevens. There suddenly, eventually became. It's like we had to find a Colette or give up the project. So Harry came up with Diana Rigg, who is a wonderful actress and a vivid personality, but who really couldn't sing this, you know. And so anyway, but with this, and we opened in Seattle, the Fifth, a huge theater, and it bombed, and so the things are all called, and it was dropped. It was a dead issue, you know. And we loved the piece, and we don't drop things very easily. You know, we may hang on, like for Roadside for almost 50 years before we got to production. But so we decided that we would, because Harvey and I, because of all of the rewrites that people were doing and suggesting, and they sent us home, and they were like fiddling with it, you know. We decided we'd take what we learned from that experience and do it. And that was called Colette Collage. And having seen this uh, beautiful production under limited circumstances with 110 of the shade, we thought it would be good to go to York, and we did. And then there was that production, which was very gratifying, basically because it proved that a lot of the stuff, I mean, it got really good notices. Uh,
One of the things I remember is Harvey did the set,
yes,
and I worked with him in the downstairs gym as his assistant and painted what he told me to and painted it like he told me to. And I learned so much from him and just spent so much time talking with him over, I don't know, 2 weeks or so
yeah,
of that experience.
yeah. That was the basic thing was this beautiful, beautiful drop of portrait of Colette, older Colette. It was really great, I thought. And the whole thing went pretty well, but it still, it proved that it could work, but it still had, we were not satisfied. I was not satisfied because almost everything you work on in some way, and it's good if you can find it before you get in too deep, has some kind of structural flaw. I mean, cosmetic flaws are one thing. There's things that you can fix here and fix there, but a structural flaw is gonna eventually have to be addressed structurally. And if you don't have it, and Colette has always had and continues to have a structural flaw. And that flaw is that we made the decision, what we wanted it to be about was her whole extraordinary life, doing so many different things. That was what it was about. So, but that very essence made it almost impossible in the 2 hours traffic of our stage to pull things together and to make a cohesive, dramatic piece out of it. And so that remained, I will have to say that years later, when York, as part of the Mufti series, with the later on where you did 5 works, I had a chance to rework that, and it really got a lot closer. And we had a great performance by, what's her name? I can't think, the Greek actress, Greek American. Never mind, it'll do. Anyway, so that was a very helpful experience at York, even though I think after that, with another theater, we tried yet another one, which with Betsy Jocelyn.
Music and Theater Works.
Yes, and that
which is in our space, what became our space at St. Peter's.
That's right.
Yeah.
And anyway, so on the basis of the basically in terms of the production, it was very gratifying at York. I was very impressed. I've always been Mr. Off Broadway, you know, and I've always felt most at home, at least at home, when people are spending lots of money and doing lots of razzle dazzle, you know. And I couldn't believe that this Wonder Woman, Janet Hayes Walker, was actually getting people to do what they did, to get a show on there. It was incredible. I mean, it was put on in the gym, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And every night in the run, not only did they have to like remove the set, they had to remove all of the seating and the bleachers and the whole, they had to complete but after every performance. I mean, wow. it's not everybody who can get people to do that, you know.
True dedication. And several of the members of the board were part of that crew that took up the set and seating. Jerry Fisher and Molly Gross are still on the board, and we're grateful.
And I was impressed, and it really called up college days for me, because when the show wrapped and they did the take it apart, Harvey and I both like got into our overalls and like carried things and did, you know, and helped do the strike. That's what the word I was trying to find. Anyway, so it was sort of like, in that, having had that experience, it's like we'd been through the wars in a sense, and we were like we were
members for your life.
Yes, right. And
well, another nice occurrence out of that production, out of the experience of Colette Collage, I met your wife, the choreographer Janet Watson.
Yes.
She became a dear friend for almost 30 years, working with me on shows at York and elsewhere. Two of the shows that I remember most fondly were Taking a Chance on Love, the John Latouche musical that Eric Hoganson created for us, and Lingoland, a fascinating survey of the work of Kenward Elmsley.
Yes.
Janet was absolutely essential to both these projects, which I directed, and brought a fun, no-nonsense work ethic to everything she did. As someone who collaborated with her more than anyone, can you tell us a little about her artistic approach and your collaboration?
Yes, the thing that Janet could do, you know, tits and ass and razzle dazzle, you know what I mean? And for example, I saw some productions that she did with Fran in those big theaters, like in
Jane Park and
well, no bigger than that. Those as part of the circuit, so and so circuit, you know, like.
Oh yeah.
And she did like Annie Get Your Gun and that Cole Porter musical about the ship.
Oh, anything goes.
Anything goes. And she did the tap dancing and the this and that. But her real unique thing was that she was, the movement tended to be, for the shows that she wound up doing and the shows she was best at doing, tended to be like organic outgrowth of both the story and the particular performers. And she made actors who were clumsy and felt clumsy, she made them feel good about what they could do. And she kind of like helped them to blossom in terms of movement. And then, you know, then she could do other things, as for example, for York, she did that highly successful, the first revival of Pacific Overtures, which moved into an off-Broadway setting, and many others, because having collaborated with Fran, she was very good at collaborating, and she was very I have to hand it to her, because being married to me as the writer and lyricist, her first allegiance was always to her director, and I appreciated that, even though sometimes it irritated the hell out of me. But yeah, but having had those relationships, then she formed with Drew Scott Harris, where they did a number of shows at other places, but where they did, but a number of shows at York together, a number of our shows.
Absolutely. Yeah. But your two sons, Sam and Michael, were your finest collaborations with her. Would you agree with that?
I would. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'll tell you a story about Sam, the eldest son. We did our first tour of Japan with the English-speaking company, the Fantastics. We did 3 tours. The third one with 30 cities. So, and the people wanted Harvey to play, and they wanted me to be director and be the old actor. So that's what we did. The first one, Sam was 3.5 years old, and he came along for the Tokyo rehearsal, and we had our first run through, and he was the only person sitting out in the auditorium. And when it was over, he was glum, sitting there. And I said, "Sam, what's the matter?" He said, "I'm worried about Act 2." And he was 3.5 years old. But that's a true story. And I said, "So am I, Sam. So am I." And
which is why you continued to fiddle with the Fantastics over the years, including the production in Flint.
Well, I'm not just the Fantastics.
Everything.
Music theater, I drive them crazy because that's as you know, because you gave me in the just a couple of years before, or just the year before, you had your disaster, your flood at York. You did a one night reading of I Do, which I was able to do a major rewrite. It's a huge improvement, and I'm very grateful for that. And then later on, Celebration, which I was able to go to the rehearsals, and I changed. I never found the ending to that son of a bitch, but I was with, and so I was able to try 15 different endings during rehearsal. A wonderful director, David Armstrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was patient enough, and I got it. I finally got it. Oh, what a feeling of joy and bliss. And the Fantastics, I was rewriting to some extent all during the 34-year initial run. And then the revival, which ran another 12 years, the last week, I finally had gotten working in California with a wonderful director named Sima Sueco. I finally solved the problem of the number Round and Round, which had been not working. I mean, if it worked, we had to work too hard to make it work. It was structurally damaged from conception, and the actors were finally willing to even though it was the closing week after a 12-year run, to go in and rehearse that week for one performance, the final well, actually the 3 or 4, because it was the weekend, but and to see that there it did work, and I was able, and music theater with groans of agony, but accepted that it did make it better, and so forth. Yeah, music theater is not groaning with agony about the gay Fantastics. They're very happy about it, and because it seems to answer a need, and they think it will be popular, and I think so too. Certainly,
Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, we well, let's work on getting it to New York. Backing up a little, in 1991, we tackled Philemon. Again, Fran directed. You're quoted as saying, I think Philemon may well be the most interesting show Arvi and I ever created. Can you expand on that? Interestingly, the original cast album was recently remastered and released by Harbinger Records, I'm delighted to say.
Yes. Well, again, I can't stress enough the importance of getting structurally sound. And I'm very creative, too much so sometimes, you know, and I get lost in my own creativity, and I lose. I'm not strong structurally. I'm a good lyricist, and I can write funny things, and I can create even interesting characters. But playwriting is, the spelling is WRIGHT, not the GH.
Right.
It's like constructing a piece of furniture or a building or a bridge or something. And if I tried to construct or repair a bridge or a piece of furniture or anything, it just, God gives with one hand and he takes away with the other. So I can do what I can do. I can be Mr. Poetry, but in terms of Mr. Structural, it's a hard thing. Anyway, Philemon was striking out, doing some daring things, and in a kind of way, in our theater, our own theater, in Portfolio, a way that we had dedicated our lives to following a certain kind of theater. Now, if you want more information about that, anybody listening, the last 2 years, Dan Shaheen and I have been working constantly on the website. It's called jonesandschmidt.com. But once you go into it, it's Jones and Schmidt and Jones and Schmidt. And it is full of really, if I do say so, honestly, just give it a try, folks. It's full of some really interesting stuff, including me doing scenes with Harvey playing a lot of unknown music. And it also has, Harvey was a very famous and hugely successful illustrator. And it has hundreds of his paintings and illustrations and drawings. Anyway, I wrote a whole section there as part of, I put in my notes for a memoir called Trying to Remember. And one of the big sections is all about Portfolio and what we came to believe and continue to believe is our opportunity and our mission in the theater. Well, going back to Philemon, it worked. The structure worked there. In Celebration, which had preceded it, and in Bone Room, which followed it, there were still structural issues. As I say, Celebration, I finally got it right after what, 50 years. But anyway, so that was the reason. The production at York was a disappointment to me. I will have to say. I felt, first of all, we had an incredible performance by Dick Latessa, who is playing the central role, Cockgun, and he was very, very funny, and you could totally believe him as this kind of smarmy, low-life guy. but he also was able to transition almost into an Olivier sized creature as he breaks through his fear and becomes illuminated and becomes released into a greater person, and that didn't happen. And so the person who was a good actor, but was a person who was like basically still a comic, who that miraculous transition did not occur. So that was this woman, and I just felt like also that everything we did, Harvey and I co-directed it, the original Philemon. I just think everything we did was right. After working on it in workshop there for 3 years, Jay Harnick, wonderful producer and director, and Sheldon Harnick's brother, came to see so many productions of Philemon that he said we should call our theater the New York Philharmonic. Anyway, so that was that.
One of the highlights in our Tom and Harvey history was the show goes on, a review of your work so far, which we presented in 1996. It was a gigantic hit and ran something like 4 months and should have transferred to a commercial run, but sadly it didn't. I don't know whether it was a Times review or what that didn't do it justice.
But the Times review was a rave.
Oh yeah, it's right. It's right. I was in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it was the only. I think it's the only show we've ever done in New York that got universally good reviews. I mean, very good, and it was great to do. It was, and we were. It's a good recording, and we could have moved it, but we were so like high and mighty. We thought, well, the theater needs us to be writing new things, you know. But I'm really sorry. If I weren't so completely, I mean, if, I would love to do it again, you know. But and I've tried to persuade Music Theater, but they say nobody wants to do a review of people's work, and there's like a lot of it is me telling stories, very amusing, and
well, yeah, what made it special was you and Harvey were in it. Harvey at the piano, and you.
Yeah, that's true, but the material is really funny. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. And so I tried to persuade Music Theater, and it's a similar thing to something I've done recently, a review, which I've been working on for fun, called The Magic Circle. And but in terms of, they said, you know, it won't work without you and Harvey doing it, but I think it would. And in fact, you know, like I think, for example, what I would do if I were producing it, I would get Norm Lewis, for example, to come out and say, "Good evening, I'm Tom Jones, and seated at the piano is Harvey Schmidt," and it would be Nancy Ford, for example. So you could clearly know that it's like they're playing the parts of Harvey.
Right, right.
And get to tell the same funny stories and sing the songs. In the that new review, I think I told you, oh, can we take a little break from the thing?
Sure.
I mean, one of the things I wrote a series of parodies, but one of them is for Prince Charles, a parody called "Soon I'm Gonna Rain," and it's fun to do. And also, here's a short parody. Okay, if you go for a dive and there's something alive, that's amore. If you stare in surprise at two bright, beady eyes, that's amore. So I want to warn you, signore, they're said to be quite predatory. If you stick out your hand, you'll be sorry, because that's amore. Anyway,
Yes.
uh, so the show goes on with a great experience, followed by my biggest disappointment with the York, and it certainly wasn't the York's fault because it's a damn beautiful show with a damn gorgeous score, a wonderful cast, and a tremendous production put on by York, and it was pissed on by, I think, everybody, even people who
Yeah.
were like normally fans of ours. And I took me years to figure it out, and I think I finally did. And I think it's the thing that sunk it, even though it's just delicious work. I mean, you in the Jones in the website, I do a number of scenes which I enjoy, but you can hear them, and you can hear like in the great Irish plays, you know, with the lingo. This is a different lingo, but it took place like 2 months after the presidential
9/11.
election was stolen by George
Oh,
W. Bush from Texas, and with help from his Texas cohorts. Like it really was. I mean, they stopped, and even though they stopped counting the actual votes and said, we'll just turn it over to the Supreme Court, which his father had substantially packed. So, and the roadside, the leading character is called Texas. And people just were not ready to accept a little folksy humor and shit kicking from somebody named Texas. When Hanny first steps out of the wagon and Texas meets her father, and she says, "Who's that you're shaking hands with, Pep? I can't make out nothing but a smudge and a pair of legs." Texas says, "Well, listen, this here smudge is me, lady, and the legs too. I reckon they're mine." And she says, "Well, I've saw worse. And make you acquainted to my daughter Hattie, Mr. Texas." And she says, "Texas? I thought that was a state." And he says, "Oh, Texas is named after me. And I'm sort of a state myself in a way of talking." And she says, "State of smart aleck, I'd call it." He says, "Look here, Miss Annie, I've spanked women like you." And she says, "You ain't ever seen a woman like me, let alone spanked one." And they're off to this, like Beatrice and Benedict, to me, a
yeah.
classic love-hate confrontation with some
But
fantastic songs and orchestrations. I mean, I just thought we were going to have one old piano, and you were so great to actually have a really high quality country and western band do the stuff. It's a terrific recording, I
and
think.
and then when we did it in the Tom Jones Mufti series, it you made one change that I think significantly helped it.
Oh, turning the Ike's into other characters, but having them play a lot of different characters, right? Was that what that
Yeah,
changed?
but also doing away with the show within a show.
Oh, yes, right. Yes, that was a cumbersome thing. Although, but because it's on the cast album, I don't know if we could ever try to like sell it. I think music theater does handle it, but I don't think anybody's ever done it. It's a shame, but onward and
Yeah,
upward.
yeah, that production later on proved so much about how it could play and how
Yeah,
it should play.
yeah.
But anyway, Mirette, uh, was a show that I designed. I got to know it at good speed in a simple production. And we did it in the Mufti series um, in 2005.
Remember.
In between, there was a less successful production at Goodspeed by different people. Did you?
That was the most disgusting. That was the worst theatrical experience I ever had. It was so. Drew Scott Harris had worked with the show, worked developing it like for 3 years. We'd gone out to Sundance 2 different summers and worked on it there. And then we did it, tried it out at Goodspeed at Chester, where there are no reviews. And it was just
Right.
People loved it. It was just wonderful. And the cast was great, everything. And then the forces behind the book that it was based on, and we had not married the rights. The forces said they insisted on firing Drew, who'd been instrumental in the whole thing, and they hired a man. I mean, it was like Comden and Green, except if your heart's breaking, it's not funny. He changed the opening, which is a lovely thing about a group of in the 1890s in Paris, a group of theater people, music hall people who lived together, and the proprietor's daughter is Mirette, who dreams of being a wire walker. And they're all support each other. But he opened it in a dream sequence where the sweet young boy who's the juggler and having a hard time comes out half naked and starts juggling bloody body parts. If you could believe that. I mean, if you could believe that. And there we were, but since the original people have seen that was a mistake, and they've cooperated with on collaborations, and there was a production in Kansas City, I think, got wonderful notices, including from Peter Felicia, who went down to see it and came back and wrote an article saying, to all of you, I think he wrote for the little publication by Music Theater, said, all of you people looking for a show to do, this is it. This is the show that kids will love, but all the parents will love it just as much as the kids. And it's true. If it just can get a production, if any of my shows now can get a production, it'll open the door. Otherwise, it's very hard to persuade anybody to, like the Fantastics having run in effect for 52 years is not a good sign. It's a bad sign, because they figure out that maybe the writer might be old, and people want to catch the wave going like this. They're all afraid of getting the wave going like this. But if one of these gets on, like Harold and Maude, or maybe even, like, surprisingly, the revised Fantastic, and it shows that it's a new work or new revision, and that it works, then the door will open, and I can get these shows that I've worked on and continue to work on. The last 5 years of my life have been the most productive years of my life in terms of writing. Strange.
Really? Who can say that?
Yeah. Just going into my 90s. I mean,
Wow.
it's not great going to the bathroom, but the writing has been terrific.
Well, never mind. In 2012, we presented your Mufti series of The Show
Yes.
Goes On, Roadside, Harold and Maude, Colette Collage, and The Game of Love. I was particularly taken with The Game of Love, which you were with Jacques Offenbach and Nancy Ford.
Yes,
based on the Anatole stories. We presented in the Mufti series in 2012. I think it was the New York premiere.
it was. It
And
was.
and it surprised me so much that it worked so well and took that long to get to New York.
Well, I don't think we had ever submitted it, for one thing. I used to work on it. We did it. It had a strange history. When it was originally, I did it as a play with 8 songs with music by Offenbach, but not like a musical. And it was the you remember Association of Producing Artists, APA, that Ellis
Yeah.
Rabb and Rosemary did? Well, it was the very first production ever done by that theater. Rosemary had a friend who had a theater in the Bahamas, and they did it there. And then for a couple of years, they did it at the MacArthur and various other high-class regional theaters. And then Ellis got a chance to do it at the Circle in the Square, but he and I differed, and he felt that he should be free to make any of the changes, and I felt he should not be free to make any of the changes. So I withdrew it, and he did a version of his own, which was a huge flop under the title Anatole. And I continued to work on it, getting Nancy involved, which she hadn't been originally.
Oh.
And we did a production at the Great Lakes Theater Festival with Jerry Friedman directing. And then we were just both different. We both continued to work on it. And for me, it was always just, whenever I was blue, I would go to my office or my study and get out Anatole, the Game of Love, and I would read and laugh and enjoy and polish and polish and polish for 40 years. Nancy, I wrote like 4 additional tunes, as well as doing some adaptations of Offenbach music. Love working with Nancy. God, she's so great.
I agree.
And so maybe it'll, it's the climate now is for players that are like, as the narrator says at one point, he says, but not too serious, that's another play. And then as Viennese would wisely say, champagne's high, but it's worth the price. Not much nourishment, but the bubbles are nice. And that's true of the Game of Love. But now it was done last year in Paris. And it was being revived right now in Avignon. And so interestingly, the other option, which I've never seen it done that way, but they did it in Paris because we always included it as an option, it's 5 women. The love affair is to have all of them played by one woman. So it becomes much more manageable in terms of cast size if you're in a small theater.
Interesting. After Harvey retired, one of my favorite shows that you worked on was, and are continuing to work on, was Harold and Maude, composed by Joe Thalke. It had been done elsewhere to varying degrees of acclaim, but we presented it in a reading in 2000, and then in your own Tom Jones Mufti series in 2012. Would you talk about the recent reading, like 3 weeks ago, and what changes you made to it, and anything that came out of that?
The whole arc of the working on it has been to find out what it really is and what it's really saying. And for me, part of what I was saying, like the film is it's a lovely film, but this is a very, very different piece than that. And I want to make sure that the MAUDE, I don't want to be in competition with
Ruth Gordon.
Ruth Gordon Jones. Her name is Jones,
Really?
The first line of her play about her life, she says, "I hate Jones for a name." That's the first, years ago, is the name of the play. But to find the thing, so in the film, first of all, the boy is you never see him seriously considering suicide, which you do here. He has a love song to suicide called "The Real Thing." And when Maud decides in the film to commit suicide, it's because she's decided that after age 80, there's no point in living anymore. And I can hardly endorse that at this point in my life. But and then when she does do it, she doesn't involve him. He's surprised to see her going by, being taken in an ambulance to the hospital. In this, I want to. There's a main big scene at the end where she tells him she's taken the pills, and that he says, "Well, we'll take you to the doctor," and she says, "I've been to the doctor," and he says, "Well, I'll take care of you," and she says, "Put me to bed, get me dressed, take me to the bathroom, give up your young life to take care of my old life. I don't want that, Harold. I don't want that at all." And she persuades him to stay with her and help her make her passage. And she gets him. She has some champagne and gets him to move her over by the window where she can see the stars. And she says, "Now, isn't this better like this than being in some hospital with all those tubes and the television blasting on the screen? I'd much rather you remember me like this with a glass of champagne." And he says, "Don't die, Maud. Please, don't die." And she says, "I'm not afraid of dying, Harold. I've been afraid of not living, but I've never been afraid of dying. It's organic," which is what she says about the pot she grows in the backyard. And then she sings a song. We're like birds and we fly away, we disappear, but we have the most important thing. Before we fly away, we have the chance to sing. Don't miss the chance to sing. And then she says, and this is what it all comes down to, and what I finally found, and for the first time it was in this reading, and it's what I was looking for. And it's curious because that's what she said. She says, "Harold," she says, "I've been planning this for a long time, but I kept putting it off, and I was waiting for something, and I didn't know what it was, but now I do know. I was waiting for you, Harold. You're my tree. I need for you to grow." And that's it. That's what I was looking for all this time. So that the piece, it's not just about this, like Auntie Mame, her teaching the young guy, but she needs him as much, if not more, than he needs her. And so that becomes, in that terms, then it becomes a great love story.
Yeah, it worked better for me than it ever has at this reading, and
Yeah,
it had to
yeah.
do with casting and
Well,
all
there were
these.
a lot of rewrites in this one
Yeah,
from the previous one, but I think this is it. You know, somebody's got to do something. The other thing which we haven't talked about, but which we is what musical version of The Tempest, originally called La Tempesta, written by wonderful, wonderful composer Andrew Gerley. I mean, wow. And I think that is my best work that I've ever done. But it's now called Prospera. And I feel I'm so glad I was allowed to live. I've been allowed to live long enough to write this, because it is the culmination of a lot of things that I've been wanting to write and do and have and whatever. And it goes back to it goes back to the origin of what it's all about. In the opening, in a blank, a bare stage, Prospera comes out in her old tattered robe of indeterminate age and period, and she says to the audience, when she's got her staff, a wooden staff, she says, I draw a magic circle in the sand like this. She does. I touch the circle and it turns to light like this. She touches, there's a shaft of light. It's filled with possibility, a journey of discovery, but only if we both believe that this can be true. For the secret of the magic lies not just in the magician, but also inside you. I ask you now on this bare stage to create an enormous storm. I ask you when I speak of lightning to see it slice the night. One or two passing shadows must you turn into a fleet. And then when the storm is over, I ask for you to come with me and spirit-like to fly through time back to the island which was, is mine. And most of all, I ask you now to take this empty circle and fill it full of life, like this. And she makes a gesture, and the storm begins, and we're underway. But that the audience co-creating with you is the thing we've been working on all our lives, all of my life I have.
that's extremely exciting.
At the very end, then, when she's like, there's some beautiful stuff. As when she when she's able to like forgive and to like she looks at the person who's taken her kingdom, and then says, look at us, are we not the same? Jesus, I can't remember. Look at us too. No, we're not the same. I've hardened my heart like his. I've shrunk my soul. I've gorged myself for such a long time upon the rotting carcass of revenge, putting my faith in La Tempesta, hate, as if hate could heal, as if hate ever grew anything worth growing, and so forth. And then she, Ariel, and she frees Ariel as she's promised to do. And Ariel, for the first time, feels the weight, her weight of her body on the stage. And she looks surprised, and she goes over and she crawls off the edge of the stage and she walks up the aisle, and the ushers open the door, and we have traffic sounds from outside, and Ariel goes outside and they close the door. And then she finishes up her thing, and they have with a song, "We Are Such Stuff as Dreams Are Made On," and they vanish, the various people. And finally she's left alone, and she says, "This magic circle I now extinguish, my secret spells forego, for this rough magic I here abjure. And when the music ceases playing, which even now it does, I'll break my staff, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my magic book like this." And she breaks her staff, and the masking is pulled away. And you see backstage, you see the actors getting out of costume, you see the stage manager with the earphones and all of that. And then she puts the staff back together, and then all is clear. And then she says, "Farewell."
Wow. Wow. I'm not sure I want to be the set designer for that production, but
Well, I mean, uh, if push comes to shove, if the backgrounds are just like some cloths or something, the actors can just pull
yeah,
them down and then
yeah,
hold them back up.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want it to be technological.
It doesn't. No, I was making.
Yeah, I mean, no, I understand, but
humor.
yeah, it's a good point, actually, very good point.
You have been a major part of our company for 41 years, and major part of my life. And we are grateful, and we hope that there are other collaborations still to come. Do you have any words of wisdom to
Oh,
leave us with?
words of wisdom. No, I don't. I don't. I do have a farewell, which I don't know if I should do it here. I'm saving it for my memorial service, but so maybe I shouldn't do it here.
Okay, it's up to
Uh,
you.
Huh?
It's up to you, but it may be
Yeah.
difficult for you to deliver at your memorial service.
Well, that's what I planned. Yes,
Oh,
that's exactly the
a
plan. Because
hologram.
I intend to have Sam tape it, and then it's the last. I think you probably, if you looked on the website, you've seen it. It's the
I
in 1962. Harvey and I, and working with Bob Benton, did a little art film of paintings, like 25 minutes long, 24 minutes long, called A Texas Romance, 1909. Very beautiful.
Right.
And Harvey did a gorgeous score to it with a great theme. And Harvey always wanted to have me set a lyric to that theme. And I never could find the right thing. But after Harvey passed away just a few years ago, and I and my wife Janet passed away, it came to me. There was somebody had sent me a saying, a Native American saying, which was really stuck with me, even though the rest of it made into a little poem, was more like a Hallmark greeting card, But I realized that the basic thing it was saying, which was "Don't look for me here," would fit exactly with this music, and so I set a lyric to it, and we put it on the website, and with also the sheet music, and it made Joe Falcon played, and wonderful actor who played Texas in the Mufti revival of,
Ed Watts. That's
yeah, right. I think it'll be more of a crowd pleaser for the memorial if I do it.
Okay.
So. uh,
Okay. Well, it's been great reliving these wonderful
Oh.
times with you. I look forward to seeing you in Connecticut sometime this summer
Oh, yes.
and
very nice.
taking a dip in the pool.
Yep.
And here's to the joy you brought to so many people throughout the world, and with your unique view of the world. And thank you.
Well, thank you. It's great to see you. Looking good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.